Welcome to Two Humans Talking, the podcast that talks about what it takes to be healthy and stay healthy in a modern, fast paced world. I'm your host, Tiffany Simms, and today I am here with Dr. Amy. We are going to talk juicy, we are going to talk real, we are going to talk about the times in our lives where we look back and we have that moment of like, what have I done in the last 10, 12 years of my life? And how to like transform that into your superpower to propel you into the next chapter. And so, Amy, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to chat. Before we dive in, can you share a little bit with us, like what makes your soul sparkle and what makes you you?
Oh, I only recently discovered that vulnerability is my superpower. And the more raw and real I can get with myself and with others, like the more alive I feel. And so that's what I'm here for. That's what makes me sparkle. And I see that in you too. So this is gonna be super fun.
I only know how to be myself. So I feel that. And what a magical gift. And I just said like I only know how to be myself, and that it comes from a like almost like a trauma response, uncomfortable feedback of people being like, you're so real, you're so authentic, you're just yourself all the time. And for me, it's like, well, who else am I gonna be? Like, I don't know how to be
Yeah.
anyone other than myself. So thank you. Thank you for liking and
Oh,
recognizing that not that the reason people say that isn't because they're like trying to make me uncomfortable, but it's because they see something in me that either they admire in themselves or that they truly don't see in the world around them. And so when you said that just then, I was like, I feel that.
yeah. Well, so I have a slightly different take on that because I think what we see in others, good or bad, is what we are not allowing ourselves to see within ourselves. Like we've kind of separated it from like the I to the it. And so I see it in you because it is in me. But unlike you, it took me like 40 years of trying to be everything else to everybody else and being completely dissociated from Amy, from me. And it's only been in the last 2 years I finally figured out, like, oh, that's why everything sucks. It's because I'm pretending to be somebody else.
Oh, wait, I didn't actually know myself in this process.
I
Do you know
didn't.
how real of a concept that is? How many women feel that way?
Yeah, I do. I do. For me, like, the tipping point was motherhood. I have a 4-year-old, and I think I say she ripped out of my body and tore open my heart. It was just so like big. I couldn't pretend everything was okay anymore because of the bigness of this child entering the world and like having to confront what that meant for myself and for her and just everything. And like there was like 2 more years where I tried to pretend things weren't happening, or that I could just be the way I was in the world and that would be okay. And I just like it's a big fat lie. And I couldn't look her in the eyes and look myself in the eyes and like keep telling that lie.
Now, did you know it was a lie though in the moments that it was happening, or was it more of just like hindsight's 2020 and you can see things about yourself now that just weren't clear before?
I think that there's parts of us that always know when we're in integrity and when we're not.
Mm.
And when we're not listening to those voices or acknowledging those parts, there's repercussions. And we can like pretend it's like the world is falling apart or stuff is happening to us. But in my life, in my experience, the times that I was most in denial about being in truth are the times my health was the worst, my relationships were the worst, my finances were the worst, and I was doing things to kind of perpetuate that, to keep checking out. I was mindlessly shopping, I was binge eating, I was like watching Netflix, and I was just pretending everything was fun. And it was so out of integrity. I spent years with chronic fatigue syndrome. Like right when I graduated from med school, I had a massage table in my office that I would use for patient exams. And I was taking 2 or 3 naps a day, like between patients, because I was so exhausted. And that was part of my trauma response. And then also part of there's like there's like some viruses and some crap like that were contributing, of course, but it can really snowball when we're not in alignment with like who we think we are, who we're being in the world, and like who we want to be.
Yeah. I don't know about for you, but like when I think about what you just shared for myself and I go back, because like 100%, yes. Like things aren't right. Like when you're not in flow and you're like finding reasons to self-destruct, and it's always someone always needs you. There's always a thing that's blowing up that's taking your attention. Always long hours at work that weren't planned, right? And
Mhm.
when I look back, I don't really know if I knew I was doing it, but when I look back, I can see myself using work as a crutch to avoid having the conversations that I didn't know how to have at home.
Yeah.
Like to
Yes.
avoid. And I don't know that I knew that. I just knew like it was such an easy thing, like working longer, having to stay late at work for me was like such an easy
Hmm.
thing to anchor into to avoid having to confront the shitty stuff that was happening at home because I didn't know how to have a
Yeah.
conversation. I didn't know how to help myself.
Yes.
And it was so much
Yes.
easier to just be like, I gotta work and really truly
Uh-huh.
believe to my core that work was the reason things were falling apart at home and blame then work instead of having a narcissistic partner who was like always undermining me, you know? Um,
Hmm.
it was because I was little Miss Independent Woman. I knew who I was. I was assertive and I was independent and I was the woman, you know what I mean? And so like identity wise, I
Yeah.
could not handle what the truth was. I was protecting myself.
Yeah. Yes, yes. To me, I see myself in this, my version of it, but I resonate deeply with what you're sharing. Because 12 years ago, I blew up my life because I didn't know how to have an honest conversation with myself, with my ex-husband, now, and with my employer. So I volunteered to go to Afghanistan with the military. Like that's how detached I was from my own truth and my own
Absolutely,
power.
sign me up. I'll go.
I was like, I'd rather go to Afghanistan than
Maybe it'll work itself out while I'm gone.
face my boss and my career choices in this marriage that is like killing me and could kill me because there was abuse there and narcissism and just like a separation from my own power and my own ability to influence the situation. I felt so helpless and so caught up in it all. I was like, I'll go to Afghanistan. And I told myself, if you survive, you do whatever you want when you come back.
Maybe some distance, things will just like move on their own.
It's
You
a
know, I'm
distance.
guilty of that now in some ways. I have a very like strong conviction that as long as I stay true to myself, everyone who doesn't fit that will self-select and remove themselves. So
Mm,
like I don't have to have uncomfortable conversations because they
interesting.
will either rise to the occasion or get so uncomfortable they leave. Now that we're having this conversation, I want I feel like there's a truth in that there is truth in that, but there are certain areas in my head right now that I'm not that I don't want to go down those paths, but that I am doing it by default because I don't want to
Mhm.
confront situations.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is like, I imagine there's a Venn diagram, right? And some people, some circumstances fit and that works okay. But how's the rest of that working, Tiffany?
Mhm. You know, I'm gonna have to work through that. That is
Yeah,
that is a like right moment right in the face.
yeah.
Because there is
And it,
truth in that, like, as long as you're on
yeah.
your path, people like it's not, I believe that it's not our job to bring people along or convince them our way is
Mhm.
the way, that we're all on our own paths and have our own destinations. And that as long as I know where I'm going, people will either come with, decide to follow and come with and stay on the journey with me, or they just remove themselves because we're not going in
Yeah.
places. Um, but yeah, fuck.
That yeah. And
Remember earlier when you asked me if cussing was fine and I said when the fuck fit? That was when
yeah.
it fits. Fuck.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. And what I hear you saying is like, I guess what I saw, what I reflected is like maybe a little more passive approach than what really fits in like your personal value system. It's like they'll just leave if they don't agree. And then there's like, but what power do you have to actually influence who stays, right? Versus who goes,
Yes.
like directly versus like indirectly.
Yes.
And claiming that power, like that juices up all aspects of your life,
Yeah.
not just those aspects.
I have been avoidant of this. I have been avoidant because it's like it's uncomfortable. And I think
Yeah.
you know what else I think plays into this? Time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because like that framework works so well in so many thanks Sue, in so many ways and in so many areas I can see the proof of it working, right?
Mm-hmm.
But time, I think, plays into that.
Yeah.
I
And
was
that's,
so excited to start this podcast and I was so distracted by naked spas that I like was trying so hard to set this pot like set up our
Mhm.
conversation that I completely just couldn't. So I want to go back for a second. Before we hit record, you were sharing with me that like you just turned 42
Yes.
and Facebook did what Facebook does best, which is remind us of where we've been. And
Hmm.
12 years ago, which we just kind of talked about a little bit, you had blown up your life and here you are ready to do it again and like processing what
Yeah.
that really looks like for you. Like, so from that standpoint, I'm like trying to get my brain back because my brain wants to go a million
Hmm.
places with you right now.
Yeah.
What was the initial like reaction when you saw the Facebook memories from 12 years ago, knowing that you're currently blowing up your life in such a strategic way right now?
Yeah. So, first of all, I said my bestie since I was 10 is Tiffany, and I was sitting in a hot tub at a naked lady spa the other day with Tiffany and her friend Tiffany. And so I knew this would be really fun with you, Tiffany. Um, Naked Lady Spa. It's just a place where it's like a traditional Korean spa. So you just they've got all the hot tubs and the cold plunges and the infrared sauna and massage
So cool.
packages, and you just everybody's naked though. And that's just how you do it. So you get real vulnerable when you're in there naked. But I will just put a plug in there because I always leave with so much body appreciation for myself, for everyone there. And I remember no matter what I think about me, I am somebody's goal. And also look at the beautiful diversity of humans, right?
Yes.
And that just keeps me going and remembering like we all fit here. We all belong here.
The first time I went to an adult resort
Mhm.
that was like completely like nude was like the most amazing. I was like so not on board with it because I was just like I was uncomfortable in my own skin and like I wasn't the party girl and like all of these reasons for why I was just like I'm not sure this is for me, but like okay, like my friends wanted to go. It was the most freeing experience I had ever had. And I was like, I truly believe had I had that experience of seeing everyone naked years before, I would not have had the body dysmorphia issues that I had because I didn't actually know what naked women looked like without their clothes. I didn't
Yeah.
know everything was like squish, tuck, tipped, like taped in and like
Yeah.
contorted. I just thought that their bodies looked the way on the under the clothes that they did on the outsides, and mine didn't look
Yeah.
like that. So, like when you
Same.
say that, I'm like, I totally get that. It
Yeah.
is so freeing.
It is. And so 30, when I was 30, so 12 years ago, I turned 30 and I was coming back from Afghanistan from this experience. I would not have gone to a naked lady. I did not want to see myself in the mirror. I had implants. I was binging and doing exercise to balance it. And I was so detached from beauty and from myself. Like the phrase I use is self-abandonment. I was so self-abandoned that I couldn't tell you what I wanted, what I needed, what I liked, what I didn't like. I just didn't know. I was taking input from everybody else. And I found myself in this situation. I'm like, is this my life? What is this life? What have I chosen for myself? And I'm turning 30 at the time. And I'm like, can I spend the next decade like this? I don't think I can. I don't want to. And so I started making changes. I'd always wanted to go to med school, and I let the military talk me into the military and I was in the supply corps. I was writing contracts in Afghanistan and also doing it for the federal government. And I'm really good at it, but it's so fucking and like generating paperwork for a living, that is not my life's calling. Um, so I came back, I went to medical school. naturopathic medical school. I started dating a lady, which was really fun. I ended up marrying her. Um, we I just like I started I didn't get there completely, but I started leading with like what would feel good, what do I think I want? And I made some good guesses. And I also made a whole series of poor choices based on all this trauma from my first marriage, from my childhood. I came back from Afghanistan with PTSD. Didn't know that until I started having panic attacks later that year. And so while I was like making incremental changes towards the preferred, there was still so much I didn't know. Um, yeah. And that I've only just started to learn in the last couple of years.
Love that. What's your wife's name?
Her name's Holly.
Oh, what a lucky lady.
Yeah.
You just,
Yeah.
the
She
joy
is.
that you radiate is so like, I can feel it through the screen. Like you just are very radiating. If you're not watching us on YouTube and you can't see this woman's glow, you should go hop over there.
Of course.
And so that's amazing.
Well, so I don't want to go dark on you. We did not rehearse this. So Holly and I are having some challenges because as I start to get closer to Amy, the Amy she met 12 years ago, and the Amy that's sitting here right now, that Venn diagram we were talking about, like that overlap is not nearly as much as we both would have thought it would be, in her too. Like when we allow ourselves to really check in and get to know ourselves and like this whole self-abandonment as you start to reclaim, like, oh man, it
Sound like
does
a
some
psycho.
stuff to a
I love this
relationship.
actually. I love that. What I love a few things about it. I love that you were
Mhm.
bold enough to share that openly in this space.
Yeah.
And two, like that's so real. Every
Mhm.
single woman I have ever met has grown and evolved, and is becoming closer to who she's always been that she didn't know. And like having to navigate how to do that with other people who are doing the same, I think is the most human experience that all of us
Yeah.
share.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we've touched on it a little bit, like the tools that we use to get to certain milestones in our life, like they can get us there, but they often can't sustain us. So things I use to survive, to get to 30, to get to 40, were things like codependence and self-abandonment and body shame and things that, like, for me, having a 4-year-old, having a beautiful human child to in my responsibility, I'm like, oh fuck, I can't use these tools. I want you to have more empowered tools in your arsenal than I use to get me here, which means I need to learn more tools and do this reparenting thing so that we can like grow together as
Yes,
humans, healthy humans.
yes. And when we're fortunate enough to have people around us who are doing on a similar journey in their own, it makes the conversation a little bit smoother. Not
Yeah.
perfect, not defined, but like
Hmm.
similar, like enough where like you can say the weird words and have the weird sentences and they'd be like, no, I feel that. Like, no, me too.
Yeah.
What are you learning? Like, what are you learning right
Yeah.
now?
So
What tools
this,
are you developing in
yeah.
this space?
So this is such an interesting segue, like the communication thing. So, a red flag in my relationship, in my marriage, is a lack of intimacy. And that can happen. I love Esther Perel's work, Mating in Captivity. She talks about the safer and more comfortable you are in a relationship, often the less fire, the less flame, the less eroticism. Like there's this dynamic balance between safety and sexy. And
I
the
feel that.
more, yeah, yeah. And I felt really safe with my wife for all the reasons I didn't feel safe with my ex-husband and didn't feel safe in Afghanistan. I feel really safe with my wife. And what that does is completely throws a big wet blanket on intimacy, on sex, on sexy for us. And that is a very common occurrence. And
Just say
so
thank you for saying this out loud. Because like it's so true. Like when you think about like the dating phases of things, like it's the butterflies of the unknown and like where will
Uh-huh.
these
Yes.
progress and like how often you're hanging out together and the long weekends where you don't come up for air. And it's all
Uh-huh.
very adrenaline driven.
Yes, and dopamine, the reward, the like setting goals and having a reward. And the
And
longer
that
we're
they
in the
like me, they're
relationship,
still around. Like,
yeah,
ooh,
yeah.
like
And the longer we're in relationship, the less dopamine and the more oxytocin. And oxytocin is that yummy, warm, cuddly, cozy. It's what we feel with
let's
our
go have a
kids.
cupcake.
Yeah, but when we feel that with our partners, with our spouses, you don't want to tear their clothes off. You want to like cuddle under the blanket with them, right? And that's where the gift, right? And also the challenge is to infuse enough sexy and enough uncertainty to keep that pleasure, that passion going, and to all and when you can do that with that foundation of safety, you can really make some beautiful things happen. In my situation, we had the safety, we didn't have the sexy, and we didn't really know how to get there. And so I do what I do, which is go on like a quest. I always assume the answers are outside of me instead of inside of me. That's been a update in the last couple of years. Turns out, I have to just interrupt myself. Frozen 2 changed my life. Okay. When I just in the last couple of years, I'm like, oh my God, I'm Elsa. I've been searching my whole life for
Isn't it funny how Disney does that sometimes?
oh, Frozen,
Inside Out 2, well,
Elsa.
Inside Out 2,
Yeah.
all of the recent Pixar movies have just like
Mhm.
hit Elemental. My God, I
I
don't know if
haven't
you've
seen that
watched
one yet.
Elemental.
No, not yet. But
You should. For what we've talked about in this conversation,
okay,
highly recommend.
add it to the list. Yeah, so Frozen 2, show yourself, right? That song, like I would sob every time I would sing it. And then when I finally got the message, like I'm not crying about it anymore because I realized like I'm the one I've been looking for. I thought it was a partner. I thought it was work. I thought it was like a mentor. I thought it was my daughter. And I was like, no, it's me. I've been looking for me. And I didn't find me until I started looking for sex because I that was my
Tell me
avenue.
more.
Yes. Okay. So this lack of intimacy in my life, my partner was devastated by it, and I was kind of apathetic to it. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to be apathetic about it. I don't want to be apathetic about anything. I've been apathetic about most things for the past couple decades. Like I'm tired of apathy. It's so boring. Um, and it's like ruining my relationships, my career. It's why I set my life on fire a decade ago. And I didn't know that I was going down the road for this like strategic burn thing that's happening right now. But I went looking for pleasure. I went trying to figure out like how do I how do I get the fire burning in myself again? And as a naturopathic doctor, I had a lot of freaking tools, right? Like I'm checking my hormones, I'm looking at my diet, I'm looking at my sleep, like I'm doing all the things and nothing is changing. And at the time I didn't understand this dynamic between safety and sexy. I didn't understand that. But so in the journey to go find myself, I created space. And unfortunately or fortunately, I created a lot of space because this looks to my partner of me leaving, me like trying to get away, me trying to find
Mhm.
myself away from her. And what I was really doing and what I really am doing is just trying to find myself, right? So that I can show up with integrity and authenticity and vulnerability and have these conversations that I've been putting off for over a decade that led to this sort of codynamic dependent. I'm saying it wrong.
No, you got it. Dependency.
Dependency, right? Yes, codependent dynamic
There we go.
that got us to this point. And so what I found a tantra retreat, and I started feeling energy moving within me. And then I found the erotic blueprints, and what that gave me was a vocabulary to explain what I was feeling and what I was not feeling, and to be able to have conversations with my partner that we couldn't have before because we didn't actually have the words to describe our situation and what was working and what wasn't working. And so that kind of circles back to what you're talking about, this language. I didn't have language until I found sex, and then the erotic blueprints gave me vocabulary I didn't have before.
That's so like I don't even have words in this moment. That is so like self-aware, and which is interesting because right now you're sharing like I'm in a journey of figuring out what self-aware even means for me because I'm trying
Yeah.
to learn who I am and I felt a little lost. And but then you were also chatting about like, that safety versus sexy and the adrenaline and the mystery and the like all of the stuff
Mhm.
that goes into dating that is nerve-wracking and exciting and saucy and like invigorating because you haven't done some of those things in a while or had a desire to do some of those wild
Mhm.
and crazy things in a while.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking about it from a space of like, I was just talking about this yesterday with a friend of I'm almost miss the unhealed versions of myself because they drove me to do
Mhm.
big things because I had to like prove myself or I had to earn
Yeah.
someone's like like the approvals and the metrics and the things. I had to reach all these milestones to prove that I'm worthy. And like I have healed so many aspects of myself that I am like, at least in this version that I know right now, at complete peace. But when things are rocky and I have kind of like
Mhm.
what you were describing of that like blow up moment, it's like almost like that things I got to shake things up because something's got to move me. This is not even
Yeah.
that it's too good to be true, but it's like being this at peace is almost unsettling.
Mhm. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know if it just made sense then, because now that I'm like hearing myself in my head, I don't know where I was going, but like something
No.
in there of that not knowing what's
Yeah.
coming, the unsafe aspect of it keeps you on your toes.
Mhm. Yeah. It's
And
that
there,
dynamism. Yeah. It's that movement. There can be there's a part probably of you that worries that if you get too comfortable, you won't change or you won't strive or you won't try to do other things. But that to me, that sounds like just a part that doesn't quite understand like uh, like I don't feel like we've ever really arrived, but we
I
can
don't
be
think we arrive until
on
it's
track,
over.
headed to the preferred, right? Like right now it sounds like you're pretty clear on what you like and how you get that. And it sounds like you got a lot of good stuff going on, and that's awesome.
Yeah. For me, this conversation comes up in the concept of business.
Mhm.
When I look at Tiffany before being a business owner, not that I don't want to say I don't have ambition now. My ambition is just as high. But the things that I did to like drive to completion, very
Mhm.
different energy than where I sit
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And well, I just created that feeling, that sensation of like that pit in my stomach. I didn't like that at all. Haven't felt that in years. Ugh. But like in the previous version of me who was really, really successful in the male dominated workplace where everything was a pressure cooker, everything was due 3 months ago, she operated from fight or flight
Mhm.
110% of the time. And I did some
Yeah.
amazing shit back then. This version
Mhm.
of me, like fight or flight, does not have space unless I'm truly going to get eaten by a tiger, does
Yeah.
not have space in this version. And so I have had to learn different tools to
Mhm.
like push the envelope to drive to something a little bit faster than
Yeah.
if I were to just like piddle around trying to get somewhere. I don't have
Yeah.
the I don't have the thing chasing me for survival.
Yeah.
It truly has to come from within, which is like I was joking
Yeah.
the other day. I was like, I wish that I felt like I needed to prove myself to someone and light a fire under my butt because like this is taking longer than I would like it to. I feel like I'm dragging my feet a
Yeah.
little bit, but like I'm not willing
Yeah.
to sacrifice.
Mhm. What
I'm
I'm
not
hearing
willing to
is,
go back.
yeah. So I used to teach people about like sugar addiction and things like that. And, sugar is like, I'm not here to villainize sugar. It's got its use, right? But it's like kindling for a fire. It's not what keeps the fire burning. And willpower, that can get you to do stuff, but it's not a
It's
sustainable
not
energy source,
sustainable.
right? But in your experience with your wisdom, right, you're into something I call why power. This is the why we do things. This is the values driven approach to life. And now under why power, you've got like abundant energy, right? It's long burning fuel, a little bit slower burning, right? So you can see the vision and you're like, all right, I see it. I know how to get there. And then maybe you do need a little bit of that quicker burning willpower to just light the fire, but it's not like when you were younger, when I was younger, when we were just living on sugar and willpower, right?
Yes.
The
Willpower, I
better
say that all the
tools
time.
now.
Willpower and discipline are not a strategy.
No, not a long-term strategy.
No, they might get you off the couch to do something,
Uh,
but
it won't keep you
unless you
off.
change your core identity and your systems and your processes and like reset your autopilot, it doesn't like you, it quick burn. Like it go.
Yeah, quick burn. Yeah. Well, so in my journey to like find myself, to find pleasure, to find intimacy, I realized the career that I'd chosen for myself was another wet blanket in my life. And at that time, I went back into like the military stuff. Like in the pandemic, I had my child and I was doing telemed, and I was like, I just can't right now. Had compassion fatigue, and I uprooted my family, moved them to Washington by my childhood best friend, and I just couldn't see myself going back into medicine at the time. So I went back to what I was doing in the military. Had that safety of a salary and predictability and benefits. But it didn't take long before I was like, it was just another area of my life that was sapping all of my energy, all my vitality, all my sexy. So when I got into the erotic blueprints, I got into the erotic blueprints. I went into their coaching program. I was like, I'm going to reinvigorate my personal life, my professional life by bringing sex back into every conversation. Because I
I love
think,
that. I support this message.
yeah, with women's health, like it's the last thing with everybody's health, but I feel like it's not, it's the last stone that's over, that you're lifting up when you're trying to find, your energy, your vitality, your health. It's like we go to that last. We think it matters the least. And I'm here to say it matters the most. Your sexual energy is another word for your vitality, your creativity, your life force. Like it's all the same. And by getting in touch with it, getting more access to it, we can juice up every aspect of our life, not just what's happening in the bedroom.
Oh my God. How do people learn more about that? Because I think that this
Yeah.
is a topic that women, whether you are in your 40s with no kids or you're in your 40s and you have 10 kids, I feel like sexuality is like such an unspoken but spoken in in like the corners with your girlfriend's topic, and no one
Yeah.
really knows how. Everyone's lying about it because they're all ashamed of what they do or don't have, whether they're having a
Yeah.
lot of intimacy and now they don't want to be that friend who's like pooping on their friends' parades who aren't having any, or they don't have
Yeah.
any and they don't want their friends to think that they're part them there's problems at home. Like, how do people start exploring that for themselves in a way where it like reinvigorates them?
Yeah. Well, this is just like we talked about with the naked bodies and thinking that bodies are one way and going to the spa and you're like, oh, there's a lot of diversity in bodies. It's the same with intimacy and pleasure. We think everyone's having the best sex of our life. And when you actually start talking to people, a lot of people are struggling in this arena. So this is what I do in my work now. I'm a naturopathic doctor, but I'm also a coach. I'm an intimacy and eroticism coach, and I help people to kind of find this information for themselves. Something that was useful for me where so like Sex Loving Goop on Netflix is a great like foray into this. That's kind of where I heard of Jaya and the blueprints with Sex Loving Goop. So
I'll
I
have to
totally
check it
recommend
out.
that. It's super good. It's Gwyneth Paltrow,
I
but
love that
it's
you're
super
gonna go
good.
watch Elemental from Disney and I'm gonna go watch
Yeah.
Sex Loving Goop.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like I blog about this stuff on my website, dramyseiberlich.com. Hard to spell, easy to say. Seiberlich.
I'll make sure it's linked below.
Thank you.
You're
But yeah,
welcome.
this is just like this is it's so important and be able to have these kinds of conversations like open and vulnerable. Like this is where the magic really happens. So thank you for inviting it here.
You are so welcome. And I just really appreciate you going all of the random places my brain went in this conversation. Included like anyway, there's so many jets flying overhead. My brain is like scattered in this moment. So I know I
Course.
really, really do appreciate it because these are the conversations that women want to have, but they don't really know that they have anyone to have them with. And so I'm really excited that we were able to open that door today. How do people connect with you outside of the show?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, dramyseiberlich.com. I'm on social, but social sort of suck my joy a lot, so I don't do it a ton. I'm learning how to make it pleasurable. So my website's the best way to find me right now.
Well, go be a human and connect with this human. As we're wrapping up today's show, is there any final thoughts or message that you want to leave with us today?
Yeah, the only thing we like, so shame sucks pleasure. Shame is a liar. It's not true. And I just, if I could leave people with one thing, it's like those voices that tell you you're doing it wrong, you're not good enough, you don't deserve this. Those aren't true. Those aren't real. That isn't your truth. That isn't my truth. Like, we can get past that. And when we do, there's so much goodness on the other side. So don't give up.
Oh, so good. Thank you for being here. With that, that's Humans Talking, and I'll see you next time. Bye.